All right. Has everybody sent their heartfelt compliments? Hopefully to somebody. And it could be a parent, um, a sibling, uh, any family member, maybe your counselor, if your counselor has helped you guys out. Um, a different teacher that maybe, you had some struggles in a class and they helped you out with that. A friend, anybody, just a heartfelt compliment. Oh, thank you, William. I appreciate that. See, that makes a teacher's heart happy when we get to when students actually feel like we've helped them out, because that's what we want to do. Good morning, Franchon. All right, so while you guys are finishing up your compliments, let's kind of talk about what we're going over today. So we're going to be finishing up the task sheet for Module 8. So we're going to be doing tasks 4 through 6. We'll be flipping back and forth between both the directions as well as the rubric that we have for that. And I'm going to bring up the infographic. I have, Franchon, thank you. And the directions in regards to, or the rubric in regards to the infographic. So for my kiddos that are new to us today, we have actually done infographics. Gosh, I'm not even sure. Does anybody know how many times we've made infographics in this? Like, we've done them a lot, right? So I feel like by this point, my experienced kiddos, you should be like, oh, we got this in the bag. For my new kiddos, if you have not made infographics before, I'll walk you guys through it. And then on tomorrow is attendance assignment and our small group meet in the afternoon if you need help. And then on Wednesday, we kind of got like a little hodgepodge. So on Wednesday, we'll do some more on the infographic just to make sure you get that all in, since it's a project, and that is like, this project is 2 summative grades, right? So I want to make sure that gets taken care of. We're going to do a Kahoot for, I think we're going to do a Kahoot either Wednesday or Thursday. We'll do a Kahoot for the Module 8 assessment. And then we're also going to talk about Welcome to Economics and do some intro stuff with that, as well as make sure you guys are all set up through EverFi. Good morning, Madeline. All right, so as a reminder, Module 8, Lesson 2 will actually close this Friday, right? The 10th. So you absolutely want to make sure that anything that you have not completed, most especially the quiz, that gets taken care of. On last week, we had to get out our progress grades. So those have been going out, and I'm sure some of you are well aware that I sent out my attendance emails and my grades emails to parents and you guys as well, because I always copy you guys on everything I send your parents, so it's no surprise. All right. Are there any questions about what we're going to do today as we're analyzing like what it means to be a cash-free society? Anybody? No? All right. Are we ready to move on? Has everybody gotten their heartfelt compliments sent out? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So I've got, kind of a thing here for you. So guys, what is one concern or a downside if we were to become a cashless society? And you guys can either tap it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. What would be one of those things that we learned about that would be a downside if we suddenly went cash free? Can anybody think of any? Oops. I'm going to give everybody a chance. I'm hoping you guys are typing in the chat. Okay, scams and identity theft, right? You have to be very careful. Like, we know, and I think you guys have probably seen this in the news, right? Especially with the scams, a lot of older people who maybe are not as technologically savvy have had issues with that because they're unsure of some of the things that, you know, they're talking about. And even younger people, right, can also, you know, be targeted. And not because you're not technologically advanced, because I mean, technologically, you guys are great with technology, but the information, right? Like, can they really do that or can they not do that? I think last week somebody talked about, like, you know, when you put your card in for the card readers, there have been issues where there have been those fake ones on there where it scans your information. So those would definitely be two issues. Do you guys remember when we were reading one of the articles and they talked about something that happened with Target as one of the issues? Do you guys remember that one? Yeah, right. So that was the one, right, William, where they talked about the cash register system. The entire system went down, which meant unless you had cash, you couldn't purchase anything, right? Now imagine if it's like a pay point system that multiple companies use across the nation and that system goes down. Well, then it's not just Target, it's, you know, all the places that use that. And now if you don't have cash, now you can't purchase items, right? And the same thing goes with, we have a lot of hackers, right? Information getting, you know, sucked in by hackers. So that comes from those systems as well. So those are some very real worries, I guess we could say. Yeah, your money being stolen. I told you guys last time about when I had my identity stolen and what it took me. And I'm just now recovering from this. And we're talking, it's been almost 10 years of me fighting this information. And just as I started to get that taken care of, CCSD got hacked and my information went out. So everything that had changed in the years prior to that, all of that information went back out into the dark web. So it's, you know, it's kind of one of those things where, yes, technology makes our lives convenient, but there's also a downside to that as well. How do we get past that? I'm not 100% sure on that. That's definitely something that needs to be thought of, right, before we were to go in that direction. So here is the video, and I can't remember if I'd shown this guys to you, this video or not to you, but I'm going to play. It's just a short little video about having a cashless society, and then we'll come back and do 4, 5, and 6, okay?
If you want to take full control of your sales pipeline, you need to try Monday CRM. It's given my sales team.
Swipe your debit card just to catch a bus because they don't accept currency. Critics of a cashless society worry about things like privacy, saying using a card makes it too easy for people to see what you spend your money on. Supporters point toward things like Sweden's crime rate, which has a very low crime rate because of this. ABC 15 Now wants to know what you think. Are you ready for a cash-free society? Or do you think that this is a terrible idea? Gray Stafford's joining us from the Wildlife World Zoo to talk about this. Gray, you know what? I always have my little bucket here, if you call it that, little box of change whenever I need a soda. I don't think I'm ready to get rid of my change. What about you?
I'm definitely not ready to give up all my cash because I think it gives us a little flexibility and freedom. And I agree with the privacy concerns. I mean, you know, they already track how we surf the internet and how we make online purchases, which I'm not against. Those are great. but I still like the choice of choosing whether to use cash or debit card or credit card.
Now, you like the choice, but
Yes.
you are a cash man, right?
I am, but let's be clear, I work in a zoo, so we're not talking about large sums of cash. But I do like to have a little bit of cash with me. I don't use a check card. Because I think the way the law has been in the past, the policies have been that the burden is placed on the consumer if something does go wrong. If someone does steal your identity or steal your card, initially you have to kind of show that something foul has gone on, as opposed to say like a credit card where you can immediately call them and the risk is borne by the bank issuing the credit card as opposed to coming out of my checking account, which is not very large.
Well, and you know what? I'm with you in that on all angles, because I've actually had my identity stolen. And let me tell you something, talk about a pain in the behind whenever that happens. Thank goodness I have a bank that was willing to help me instantly on this, but it was all from my debit card. And that's what extremely concerning. Something else about going away from the coins. Talk about your industry over at the zoo here. How would that impact you? Because there's some fundraiser issues going on there, right?
Well, our keepers do a great job, and they have different devices set up around the zoo where you can put in 50 cents and you get a little token. And it's something that kids can take back with them with an animal imprint on it. But it's money that goes to local and national conservation efforts. So sure, having coins. I mean, my wife and I went to Trevi Fountain in Italy last year. I mean, you can't throw your debit card, your paper receipts over your shoulder. I mean, there's some history there. Plus, if it goes into private hands of a banker, isn't that one thing that the government is supposed to do, is to regulate the currency? And now if our currency isn't really a dollar anymore because it's all electronic, who's in charge of all that?
And you know what? I'm a parent. What am I supposed to give my child a debit card from the Tooth Fairy?
Well, of course you are.
Okay. All right.
Just add credits under the pillow, right?
Yeah, the Tooth Fairy is not going to change over to cash.
Yes, that's going to be very disappointing.
And I know that Santa Claus doesn't deliver cash.
That's right.
At all. Presents. All right, let's go to some of the viewer comments on this. Barbara Marks writing in, and Barbara says that takes away from our freedom of how and what we do with our money. Some things should just be left alone. And Laura says, my kids like cash when they get their allowance for doing their chores. What do I give them? A card? No, I like paper money. Agreed, Laura. Pamela says, well, we are well on our way to that anyway, but a little cash is still necessary and will remain so. Joshua writes in, once security measures and all the tools are in place to take full advantage of this, I can see this working in a way. It's not going to happen anytime soon, or at least overnight, according to Joshua, and I think he's probably right about that.
All right. So, I mean, it just kind of reminds us of some of the things that we looked at yesterday. Remember, America is still at 7.7, I think, percent still using cash, unlike, when they were talking about Sweden, who is not. All right. So hopefully everybody has their documents open so that we can finish up tasks 4 through 6. So on task 4, we have an article that we're going to go over, and it's asking, what are the 3 main takeaways from the article that you learned? Why were those points important? What can we do as a society to help with this issue? And then it asks you to explain one solution, right? Task 5, analyze the graph. Should America continue to keep pennies and nickels in circulation or stop the production on those 2 coins? Explain your reasoning for each conclusion in 1 to 2 sentences. And then finally, task 6, what are 2 conclusions you can draw from them on the graph that we're looking at? Explain your reasoning for each conclusion in 1 to 2 sentences. And that's literally exactly what the rubric says. So task 4, you have to have 2 full paragraphs answering this, your 3 main takeaways. For task 5, 2 conclusions with 2 sentences each. So there needs to be at least 4 sentences, guys. And then task 6, 2 conclusions with 2 plus sentences each. Okay. So let's go to the actual article that's in there. And it is called, "You Think Being Poor is Expensive?" And I just clicked on this from the direction page. Remember, everything that we need is in our direction page. So you just click on the blue hyperlink. So that's what I clicked on. And that is where I get this article. And it says, I struggle to make ends meet. And as a middle-aged Black man who has had his share of health scares, I have struggled for some time. So I deeply appreciate a recent conversation with Stanford economist Xavier Haverel, who wrote a 2015 paper on retail economics called Unequal Gains from Product Innovations. Has raised quite a stir in the economics community by exposing how badly the economy undermines people in my income bracket. It is no secret that the poor pay more. The poor pay more by living in food deserts, by having to drive longer distances, stand in longer lines to buy or do just about anything, by not having enough cash on hand to shop when items are on sale, by receiving less efficient anything, okay? At the same time, prices increase every year, even as wages stagnate. For those who struggle to make ends meet, it means paying for anything takes deeper chunks out of their already limited income. Haverel conducted a 10-year study of the retail market looking at purchasing power, which is the capacity consumers have to purchase necessary goods. He examined consumers of all income levels. Guess what he discovered? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer, repeated in the back of my mind while he guided me through the well-reasoned lesson, showing that purchasing power of low-income Americans has remarkably dwindled, okay? So while the author himself is African-American, he's talking about everybody. It doesn't matter ethnicity. He's talking about economic class here, okay? Poor people can afford to buy fewer things, even when buying very inexpensive products. The poor have gotten poorer and the rich have gotten richer, and it's worse than economists previously believed. Some of the ways that poverty disadvantages consumers are more evident than other. He talks about like inflation as the annual increase in the cost of goods. In a healthy economy, the annual inflation rate is low. His study shows that prices on low price and inexpensive goods, the ones most likely to be bought by those with little money, have had the highest annual inflation rates in the last 10 years. And that is even before we got into the inflation that our economy is currently battling right now. Okay, so keep that in mind. This was written prior to the inflation that has hit us. Okay, his estimates that the annual price increase on retail goods has been 0.65%, so about 6.5% lower for households making $100,000 than for households making $30,000 or less. A 0.65% difference sounds like an insignificant number. If you're low income and you shop at low-cost retailers such as Walmart, you may only see an increase in nickels and dimes on individual products. But that increase is on every product you buy. And so that ends up adding up to hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that is drained from your income every year. The reason why poor pay higher rates of inflation is that over the past decade, profit-driven companies have begun exclusively catering their products to wealthy and upper middle class consumers. New companies haven't entered the market for low-priced food and retail goods. So those markets have stagnated. He says that a stagnant market, companies and retailers can make the price whatever they want it to be. And because it's something that people need, they're going to pay for it. It's also known as unchecked greed. And that, in a nutshell, is exactly what has happened. He says, ironically, the week before I spoke with Harrell, I learned that my $725 rent was increasing by $100. My landlord claimed he had to raise rent because of the cost of buying a new refrigerator and garbage disposal for my apartment. I had a hard time sympathizing. My landlord's argument for the rent increase was a living example of his explanation of how the poor pay more for the cost of goods. He says there's time for better solutions to bolster poor consumers. He recommends increasing the amount of money the federal food stamp program provides families to buy food. This enhances their purchasing power, making them more attractive demographic. He speculates that further studies might show that raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour would have a similar effect, although we have seen with the increase of the minimum wage that it has not had that effect. And in fact, as companies have had to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, what have we seen on the cost of goods? Can anybody tell me? I think we talked about this in regards to like McDonald's. What do you see when you go into McDonald's, guys? Kiosks, right? So we're not seeing workers. So what are, in essence, Magdalene, what are they saying? That they can't afford those the increase in the minimum wage, so they've gotten rid of workers, right? How many of you guys have been in a grocery store in the last week? Okay. So what have you noticed about the cost of goods? Have they gone up? They have, haven't we? I mean, I know we talk about eggs. That's been the biggest thing, right? Because of the bird flu and all of the chickens that have had to been killed because of it, as a supply chain issue when we're talking scarcity. But the cost of goods has gone up, right? Because companies, when they have to increase the money going out for workers, well, they don't want to lose that bottom line. They don't want to lose their profit, do they? So what do they end up doing? They end up increasing the cost of whatever it is that they are selling to make up the difference, right? Between what's going out and what they have coming in. So that minimum wage that just went up to $15 an hour, does it buy you anything more? Or not really, right? Because now you're making $15 an hour, which sounds really wonderful, but the cost of goods rose as well. So your $15 an hour is not getting you anything extra, right? And I don't know the answer to that. I am not an economist. So I am not sure where we find the difference in that. I know a lot of people are like, well, government controlling things, or more of a socialistic approach. But then you also have to understand that with the government, control means more in taxes, more of them being involved in our lives. And how was our country founded? Our country was founded on wanting less government control. So again, two different thought processes, right? All right, so you talk about Professor Haverel's lessons encourage the nation to ease economic disenfranchisement by building the poor up rather than always cutting social programs. In the meantime, those in need of an emergency 100 for rent money can go to nearby Payday, our car title loan business, which until recently afforded small cash loans at interest rates exorbitant as 700%. When we get into personal finance, we're going to have a whole discussion on predatory loans, and that's what Payday and car title loans are, okay? So he says, I'm trying to keep my fingers crossed that I won't fall into that poverty trap, okay? So let's go to the actual document, right? Now, obviously, I don't have my 2 paragraphs written. All I have done, like I did last time, was just some key points that you guys need to turn into paragraphs, okay? 3 main takeaways from the article. Why were these points important? And what can we do as society to help this? At the same time, prices increase every year as wages stagnate, right? Like that is a key thing. Prices go up. Wages are not for the poorer people, right? Because as prices kind of go up, if you have a lot of cash, if you're in the upper echelon of the economic stratosphere, right? Those little price increases don't phase you in the least bit, right? But if you are in the lower end economically, every tiny penny increase adds up, right? The poor have gotten poorer, the rich have gotten richer. It's worse than economists had actually or previously believed. At how much so? Economists define inflation as the annual increase on the cost of goods. It's something you guys are currently living through. We have had the highest annual inflation rates in the last 10 years. And in fact, we are at a 40-year high in 2023. We have not had inflation rates this high in 40 years. So, I mean, that's pretty big, isn't it? We're talking, what, 1977? So that's pretty big, right? The reason that the poor pay higher rates of inflation, Haverel said, is that Over the past decade, profit-driven companies have begun exclusively catering their products to wealthy and upper middle class consumers. So they don't think that there's a big enough market for them to make lower cost products. It just wouldn't make them enough money. So let's market stuff to the rich people because they'll buy them and we'll make money, is what Harel was saying. If you think about a McDonald's meal now, any meal, $10 and up, right? And that is passing inflation down to people who look to fast food sometimes for a cheaper alternative. It's not cheap anymore, is it? It used to be getting like a cheeseburger, French fries, and a drink was just a couple of dollars. Not anymore. And for, like, God forbid you want to eat something healthy and you want a salad, well, now just mark that up like 700% as well. Does anybody have any questions about what you need to do with task 4? Okay. All right, so let's move on to our instructions for task 5. So on task 5, we're actually looking at this graph, okay? We're analyzing the graph, and the question is, should America continue to keep pennies and nickels in circulation or stop production on them? Explain your reasoning for each conclusion in 1 to 2 sentences. So obviously 1 conclusion for pennies, 1 conclusion for nickels. So let's look at this graph. So the dollar bill, it actually costs 5.4 cents to make a dollar bill. So the government, each dollar bill, they make 95, almost, well, 94 and change, right? On every dollar bill. On quarters, a quarter, which is worth 25 cents, actually costs them 8.95 cents. So it costs them less than 9 cents to make a quarter. So are they making money off of that? Absolutely. On a dime is 10 cents, and it costs them just under 4 cents to make a dime. So again, the government is making money off of dollar bills, off of quarters, off of dimes. Okay, they're not. It's not costing more to make it than it is actually worth. But now let's look at the nickels and the pennies. A nickel is worth 5 cents. And you'll see this area right here where it says face value. So this is what the nickel is worth. But it costs them 8.9 cents. So it costs them 3 cents more to make a nickel. And then a penny. Penny is worth 1 cent. Here's the face value. But it costs them 1.66 cents to make a penny. So now what you need to think about is, what do we think? So let's go to ours. So here was what I saw. This is what I just said to you, right? Nickels cost 3 cents more to produce than their face value, right? So when a nickel is produced, it is produced at a loss for the government. Pennies, they are barely used, and they're barely worth their face value, right? So if we just rounded things to the nearest 5 cents to change the pricing, would we need to keep pennies? Because honestly, how many of you guys have tons of pennies? I have tons of them, and I don't even use cash a whole lot. But for whatever reason, I have lots and lots of pennies, and I don't ever really use them. Oh, you only have 2, Franchon? Do you use your pennies? Oh, you don't? Okay. So I mean, I don't really use a lot of cash, but it never seems to fill. I always have tons of pennies, right? And I just don't ever use them back because it just seems like such a hassle to count out all the pennies. Although now that I'm thinking about how many I have, I probably should. So, Should America continue to keep pennies and nickels in circulation or stop production? Oh, okay, Franchon. There you go. You know what? I have not looked for rare ones. I just think about how many pennies I have in my wallet and how it makes my purse heavy. So in my thought process, in my mind, okay, I'm saying, hey, you know what? Let's get rid of pennies. It costs way more to make pennies than it does anything else. Nobody really ever uses them. They take up space. And if we rounded things up to the next 5 cents, then instead of it being 99, just, 95 or 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, you know what I'm saying? Just round it up. And then we don't need to, make that. And if you think about all of the pennies that you currently have, it costs them $1, 1.66%, not a dollar, 1.66% or cents to create every single penny. So take 1.66 times however many pennies you have and think about, okay, I've got 10 pennies. That's 10 cents. But now if you do, what's 1.66 times 10? Anybody tell me? I mean, I know I can tell you, but so it's okay. So yeah, it's 16.6. You have 10 pennies and it's worth 10 cents, but it costs the government 16.6 cents to actually make them. So why would we continue to make them, right? So are we good with this? Is there any other conclusions that we can come up with? Do we have a conclusion for nickels? Should we continue to produce them or no? What do you guys think? Oh, you use them for vending machines, Franchon. Okay. All right. So in your mind, Franchon, then we don't need to continue to keep making them? Is that kind of like the direction you're heading in? What about the rest of you guys? I'm not getting any answers from the rest of you. Can anybody else give me? Well, I mean, if we stop producing them, Franchon, wouldn't they like become rare? Wouldn't the ones that are left in circulation then become the rare ones? Besides like buffalo nickels? I mean, it may take a little time. Then you guys can be, like the ones who are telling your grandchildren, I remember a time when they used to make pennies and nickels. And then your grandchildren be like, what's a penny or a nickel? If that's the direction we head in, right? All right. So are we good with what we have for there? About quarters or dollar coins? I mean, I still see a lot of quarters being used though, right? And I actually see some dimes. I see quite a few dimes being used. Maybe because people, I don't know, dimes are easy to count out, 10, 20, 30, 40, All right, so can we move on? If you guys are good with task 5, give me a thumbs up, please. So that I know we're good with that so we can move on. Okay, so I see a couple people. Oh, and Sean says he's even more excited. All right. Okay, so let's go to task 6. All right, so we're going to use this. View the graph below. What are 2 conclusions you can draw from them? Explain your reasoning for each conclusion in 1 to 2 sentences. So debit cards and ACH. ACH is just an automatic withdrawal from your account. Okay. It's talking about growth in alternatives to cash and the annual percent growth in transaction volumes from 2000 to 2009. Debit and ACH use have grown dramatically, while check volume has dropped. Yeah, most people no longer write checks. Checks are now at a negative 5.8%. Credit cards are up 3.7%. ACH, where you're having money drawn directly out of your account. A lot of people do this with automatic bill paying. And then debit cards, instead of having cash where you swipe and have the money taken directly out of your account, have been up 18.4%. So when we go to the actual task, it says, what are two conclusions you can draw from what we saw in the graph? Explain your reasoning for each. It says checks are no longer, they're no longer really used. And a lot of retailers won't even accept them and have turned to online pay options. Online electronic payment systems are increasing even past credit card use. Think Zelle, Venmo, PayPal, Apple Pay, right? So those would be like two conclusions that we can draw from that. Is there anything else you can think of? Anything else that you can think of? Oh yeah, Cash App, definitely. So those are all like what you would call ACH. Now with the way Zelle and Venmo, well, actually, okay, so Zelle generally pulls directly from an account. Venmo pulls, you can have it set up to pull from an account, or you can put money on the actual, in your Venmo account to pull from there. Same with PayPal. And then of course with Apple Pay, it can either pull directly from your checking account, or you can put money into an account with them. I don't have Cash App, William, so I'm assuming Cash App does the same. I'm not 100% sure. Okay. Like I said, I wasn't sure exactly how that would happen. Okay. All right. So is there anything else that you guys can, I mean, those were some good conclusions that I got off of that graph. Did anybody see anything else they want to add to there? All right, so let's talk about, okay, so is everybody got their tasks 1 through 6 completed? Or you're almost completed? Almost? Okay. All right. So as soon as you complete that, you need to turn that in. That is one summative grade. I've gotten a lot of messages from kiddos about their grades, especially with work coming up, on like those progress reports should have been a wake-up call for some of you guys. Your summatives are your most important, right? So you want to definitely get our tasks in. Let's talk about task 7, where we actually create the infographic. Okay. So when we look at, here's our rubric. You need to give your opinion on a cash-free society. In your personal opinion, should the United States get rid of cash as a form of currency? 16 points, your full marks, 2 to 3 full paragraphs that use economic vocab and answers the question. Your position is clearly stated on what you think we should be doing, yes or no, why. Like, I should not have to read through it and go, do they or don't they? You cannot wishy-washy this, guys. You cannot play the middle. Pick a side, yes or no, and then go with it, okay? And then evidence. So evidence cited from your task list. So those 6 tasks we just did, you're going to pull your information from there. I'm going to be able to see that. So you're going to reference the graphs or the charts or the articles. Visual images, you have at least 3 visual images that connect to your infographic. Remember, your pictures help explain, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words. Use those visuals as an impact. Your overall presentation, if you need to, absolutely, William. Just make sure you have at least 3 from your task list, though, okay? Your infographic has color, it's neatly done, it has images, and it makes sense. So let's look at this. So 3 images, 2 paragraphs explaining your reasons, at least 3 pieces of evidence cited from your task list. Your position is clear to the viewer. And you're answering, in your personal opinion, should the United States get rid of cash as a form of currency? This is worth 45 points. I do not want an essay. This is not an essay project. No Google Doc. You can do a presentation and use Google Slides. You can use Prezi, or you can use free templates from like Venngage, PictoChart, Visme, Canva. Just remember, once you create your infographic, you have to download it onto your computer, and that is what you're going to attach to your Canvas assignment. Do not give me a link, guys. If you give me a link to one of those pages, all it's going to do is take me back to make my own, and then I have nothing to grade for you. Okay? Any other questions about what I'm asking you guys to complete? So are we feeling good about this? All right, so small group tomorrow. I have office things in the morning. So that is Miss Hall, because I'm using her presentation on this one. It's NVLA, Rather SG. So remember, Module 8 project is due. Task 1 through 6 worksheet. Task 7 infographic. Summative assessment worth 91 points total. Make sure you do a good job. We have 3 weeks left in the quarter. For those of you who have not taken your civics exam, make sure you get that taken ASAP. I literally only made it available for those of you who need to take it. That closes on the 24th. I have not looked yet, William. I was just trying to give everybody a chance before I went and looked. I will probably look tomorrow and then send out a reminder to anybody who hasn't finished it. Okay. Anything else that you can think of? All right, so Module 8, Lesson 2 closes Friday. If you haven't gotten that done, make sure you get your quiz done. That's a summative. Oh, I have it on the wrong day. I need to put that on here. I don't have my thing on there. Okay. There you go. Just in case you needed that on there, just to help you remember. It's tomorrow afternoon, 12:30 to 2:30. Any other questions, guys? All right. If there are no